Good morning, and thanks for joining in on the devotion. In today's passage, the Apostle Paul is talking to the believers at Corinth about authority, and it looks like what has happened is there's probably some people who are questioning whether or not Paul has the authority to speak into their lives. Should they be listening to Paul? And if we look at many of the issues in our lives, a lot of times it boils down to an authority issue. You know, if you're from my generation, the children of the 60s and 70s, we may have sown a lot of the seed that we're reaping today with our questioning of authority in our lives as teenagers and young adults. But we see a lot of issues with authority, and a lot of our issues are with authority. And what Paul is addressing here is that he has been given authority by the Lord to speak into those people's lives, and that they should be listening to him, and in turn that will make their lives stronger and more powerful. And what we need to look at is, in our lives, who and what are we given authority in our lives? And some of us, what we've done, and many times all of us could probably think of situations where we have given authority to things that God did not authorize to speak or be in our lives, and those things have ended up causing us problems, causing us issues, authority issues, because we had wrong authorities, illegal authorities speaking or being in our lives. And the other thing it does is that when we allow that to happen, when we have put ourselves subject to authorities that God hasn't given authority, then that compromises our authority in the things God has given us authority to. Pastor Donald, the last few weeks, has spoken about submission, and that the things that we're supposed to be submitted to, that people, how we are, things that are submitted to us, and the main thing that we're submitted to each other as we're submitted to the Lord. And he's done a great job teaching that, and that's all about authority, is what kind of authority are we allowing in our life. And I heard a pastor say years ago this little statement that I think summarizes really well what Paul is talking about in this passage today. And what he said was, you'll never get over the things God has put you over until you get under the things God has put you under. It's all about authority. And God has given us dominion over over all the works of his hands. He's given that to us. And yet many of us walk in no authority in many areas of our lives. And I think that Paul is challenging us today to look at, what are you subject to? What authorities are you allowing to speak into or govern your life? And are those authorities that God has ordained and set in place? Or are we actually using unrighteous authorities to guide our lives? And if we do, then that's compromising the very authority that God has given us to walk in our lives. And so I think Paul encourages us today to look at, do we have authority issues? And let's get those things settled, and let's put godly authority as what's going to speak into our lives. Those things and those people who God has ordained and appointed to speak into our lives, so that that'll release more of God's authority through us to those that God has ordained us to lead and have authority in their lives. And so I hope you find today that encouraging. I hope you also find it challenging, that like me, you look at your life and say, okay, what have I authorized that God has not authorized that's costing me the authority that God wants me to walk in? And I just hope today that you'll take that to the Lord and ponder on that a little bit and let God speak to you about that. And I think it's an exciting thing, because what Jesus, if you remember in Matthew 8, Jesus was astonished by a man who understood authority. And Paul is challenging us today in this writing, understand authority, and you'll walk in astonishing faith. So God bless you, and I hope you find this encouraging, and see you Sunday.